Welcome to this video all about kickstarting your studies at BGU. My name is Hannah and I work in the Learning Development team to support all of BGU students with their academic skills and assignments. Now we know that as mature students you may have particular concerns or anxieties about starting your degree. Some of you may have been out of education for a long time, or you might have additional commitments such as a family or career. So we've put this video together as a way of highlighting some of the key skills that you need to succeed at university. The good news is you probably have these skills already. Let me introduce you to growth mindset and grit.
So let's start off by thinking about mindset. When we talk about mindset, we're talking about the way we think about things, the way we interpret the world and how we perceive ourselves. What's your outlook on the world? Having the right sort of mindset can really help to set you up for success in your studies at university, because it helps you to keep things in perspective and to approach any challenges with positivity. Let's have a think about what your mindset is right now. I want you to take a moment and reflect on what you think about intelligence as a concept. Do you think that our levels of intelligence are predetermined, or that actually we have a lot of influence over our own intelligence? Are successful people smart, or do they just work hard? Have a think for a moment about what you think deep down about your own intelligence level. Now consider the following 4 statements. Number 1, your intelligence is something very basic about you that you can't change very much. Number 2, you can learn new things, but you can't really change how intelligent you are. Number 3, no matter how much intelligence you have, you can always change it quite a bit. Or number 4, you can always substantially change how intelligent you are. Which of these 4 statements do you believe to be true? And do you think this is true for yourself? It can be quite easy to fall into the mindset of statements 1 or 2 by thinking that we all reach a particular level of intelligence that we then can't change any further. We might even think that we can become more intelligent when we're younger, for example, learning at school, but that the older we get, the harder it is to really change how intelligent we are. These statements are more in line with what we call a fixed mindset, and the truth is that these viewpoints aren't really true. If we believe them to be true, though, they can have a negative impact on how we then approach learning. So, what you want to do is try to think more along the lines of the bottom 2 statements, especially statement 4. If we consider the idea that intelligence is something which we can always continually develop and change, then that suddenly opens up a whole lot more opportunities for learning. This is what we call having a growth mindset. The concepts of fixed and growth mindsets have most famously been explored by Dr. Carol Dweck, a psychologist who published a famous book on the topic in 2006. Dr. Dweck did a lot of investigations into how children and adults learn and how they view themselves in terms of intelligence, natural talent, and effort. In one experiment, she divided a group of school children into 2 and presented each group with a set of problems to solve. Most of the children were able to solve the problems, but one group of children were praised for being clever, suggesting their intelligence was an innate trait, while the other group were praised for working hard, suggesting that effort was the cause of their success. Both groups were then presented with the option of tackling a harder set of problems, or they could choose to continue at the level they were already comfortable with. What do you think happened? The children in the group who had been praised as naturally intelligent were actually less inclined to try and push themselves to attempt the harder problems. The children who had been praised for effort were generally much more willing to attempt the challenge. It's perhaps not surprising if we think about it. If intelligence is something which is fixed, then the further we push ourselves, the more likely we feel we will hit a point when we fail, and this failure would then represent the limits of our intelligence. This is the crux of a fixed mindset. It sees intelligence as something that can't be changed. As a result, people with this mindset will be more likely to avoid challenges, like the children in that first group. They'll be more likely to give up easily when faced with obstacles. And they'll typically avoid constructive negative feedback because it feels like a challenge to their intelligence. What about the second group of children, the ones who are happy to take on the harder challenge? Being praised for having put the effort in helps to present the idea that intelligence is something which can be developed the more effort is put in. This removes those barriers from the fixed mindset because now their intelligence knows no bounds. This growth mindset allows us to embrace challenges and setbacks because we can view these as ways in which we can learn and therefore develop our intelligence further. We see the value of effort and constructive criticism, and we embrace these because we recognise that this is how we succeed. This growth mindset is a much more effective way to approach your studies, particularly at the start of your journey into higher education. You will undoubtedly find yourself challenged at certain points along the way. You might face setbacks or receive some constructive criticism, and having a growth mindset doesn't make you immune to these things. What it does do is equip you with the means of viewing these as positive, constructive experiences, which will help you to really learn and develop your intelligence. Even if you have a tendency to fall back into that fixed mindset, we all do at times, encouraging yourself to try and turn that perspective into more of a growth mindset will stand you in really good stead to succeed in your degree. Here's the really great thing to know about this idea of intelligence. It's true at any stage in your life. This means that even if you're returning to education after a long break, or you're older than some of your classmates, you are just as capable of learning and developing your skills and intelligence as they are. Neuroscience supports this. When you learn new information, new pathways are formed in your brain. And the more you learn or relearn that information, the more these pathways are strengthened. This process, called myelination, can continue throughout your life. It doesn't necessarily come to a stop at a particular age. This is great news because it means we can all continue to grow, learn, and develop our understanding and intelligence regardless of age. It also supports the idea that intelligence is not something fixed because we're literally capable of adapting and strengthening our own neural pathways. This means that we can always learn new skills, and for you, that will include learning the academic skills that you'll learn in your degree. Finally, it reinforces the idea that effort and practice are far more important than any natural talent or ability. In fact, in her book, Carol Dweck reports on an investigation that really pushes this home. At a top music college, students were studied to see what traits helped them to succeed in becoming better musicians. Some students, who had always been told they were naturally gifted or innately talented, seemed to plateau when they reached college, struggling to improve beyond their already high standard. On the other hand, students who put in more hours of practice, even if they didn't feel naturally talented, tended to show greater improvement. Their growth mindset helped them to understand that practice and effort would help them to develop their skills, and that to need to practice so much was not an indicator of an inability to perform or succeed. Mistakes or setbacks were learning experiences to help in their development. This will be the same in your academic studies. Even if you feel unconfident in your own academic talents at the moment, or even if you find some things seem to come more easily to your course mates who have come straight from school, know that effort and practice are always better indicators for growth, development, and success. Now, this might require you to start looking at the world a little differently. It is easy to fall into that fixed mindset, thinking that just because we can't do something right now, that we won't ever be able to do it, or thinking that because something is difficult that we must be stupid. If your tendency is to think this way, it may take practice to help change that. You'll need to practice trying to look at a situation differently, setting aside that first instinct to be self-critical in order to consider a more growth-orientated perspective. Think of this as being like an optical illusion for your brain. Optical illusions work because after our initial reaction or interpretation, the more we look at an image, the more we start to see it differently. It takes time, and sometimes it even takes someone else's help. Take a look at this picture. Do you see an old lady, or do you see a young lady? The truth is that both could be seen, depending on how you look at the image. As I say, this can take time, so you might even want to pause the video to try and see the other image. Here's another example. Take a look at this dancer. Which way is she turning? Clockwise or anti-clockwise? Give it a few minutes and you may find that she changes direction. Has she changed yet? I'll give it a little bit longer. Don't worry if she hasn't changed for you yet. We'll move on in this video, but if you search for the spinning dancer illusion in Google, you'll be able to watch to your heart's content. The key thing is this. If you have a tendency towards a fixed mindset, treat this like an optical illusion. Your brain is telling you one thing, but it doesn't mean that another perspective isn't also possible. Give it some time. Ask for help to find it if you need to. And you'll get in the habit of tackling situations with that growth mindset instead. The other concept that I want to introduce you to today is grit. Grit is a concept that has been explored by Dr. Angela Duckworth, another psychologist. Dr. Duckworth was originally a school teacher, and she was interested in why some of her students succeeded while others didn't, regardless of their IQ levels. From her studies, which included not only children but also adults, she suggests that actually IQ is not necessarily a great predictor of success in reaching a long-term goal. Instead, the common thread which she identified among people who were successful in their goals was grit. She explains that grit is essentially a combination of having both perseverance and passion for that long-term goal. This combination was consistently a better predictor of success among groups like Ivy League students, military cadets at the West Point Academy, and even contestants in spelling bees. This aligns nicely with Dr. Dweck's ideas about natural intelligence, because it reiterates that actually effort and practice are more important. Grit helps us to stay motivated on a long-term project. Dr. Duckworth suggests that people who have more grit are generally more resilient, so they can bounce back from setbacks or disappointments. They're also able to keep themselves motivated and to sustain this motivation across long periods of time. And they can generally adapt better to different situations and identify ways to change their own practice to continue on their path to that final goal. Funnily enough, resilience, self-motivation and adaptability are essential traits for succeeding in your university studies. You can certainly think of your degree as a long-term project. Success isn't about what happens overnight, but about arriving where you want to be by the end of your course. So, in order to succeed in this project, you'll need to be gritty. Remember your passion for doing what you're doing, and always persevere despite any setbacks or challenges along the way. As mature students, odds are that you've already had some significant life experiences and have achieved some personal successes in your life. These might seem big or small to other people, that doesn't matter. What matters is that these were important achievements for you. For example, one of the achievements I'm proudest of is, unsurprisingly, completing a PhD. But I would also point to things like passing my driving test or learning to manage anxiety as achievements which are personally important to me. These were all long-term projects that required those skills we talked about already, so even those little successes can mean as much as bigger life milestones. So I'd like you to have a think about something you feel proud to have achieved in your life. Perhaps you achieved a career goal or raised a family. Perhaps you received praise or a commendation for a project that took a lot of work. Whatever it is, I'd like you to think about what it was that enabled you to be successful in achieving that goal. What traits or characteristics do you have which you were able to draw on to succeed? Now let's think about those characteristics in the context of what Dr. Duckworth uses to measure grittiness. On her website, she has a grit scale, which you can use to measure how gritty you are, and it asks about characteristics such as being focused on achieving a particular goal. Refusing to be discouraged by setbacks is an indicator of grittiness. Having a clear idea of your goal, striving to keep motivated, and refusing to give up are all characteristics of being gritty. Being diligent, taking care and pride in your work also contributes. How many of these qualities did you demonstrate in achieving your own personal goals? The good news is that if you recognize these qualities in yourself, you already have some grittiness. These qualities will stand you in good stead for succeeding in your goal of completing a university degree. Even if you're not sure if you have some of these, let's look at that with a growth mindset. With effort and practice, you can certainly develop them. So let's round this off by thinking about how you can now kickstart your studies at BGU. Let's keep building on that idea of everything you've already achieved, both big and small. I'd like you to make a list of all those achievements. And remember, if it's important to you, then it's worth adding to the list. Now look over those achievements. Think about why each one makes you proud. I don't know about you, but when I do this, I tend to realize that often the achievements I'm proudest of are the ones that were the most challenging. How many of those achievements on your list came easily to you? Did you have everything you needed to succeed at the start? I'm guessing that for most of you, those achievements were difficult in some way, and that to achieve them, you maybe had to acquire some new skills, put in a lot of effort, or even ask for guidance along the way. Now I'd like you to add a new item to the list: studying at BGU. Getting to the point of beginning a degree is an achievement in itself, and even though you're right at the start of your journey, you probably already have an idea of why you're undertaking this challenge and what you hope to get from it. Make a note of both of these. If you come up against an obstacle during your studies, I'd like you to come back to these notes. Remind yourself of why this goal is important and where you're trying to get to. Success will look differently to everyone. Some of you will have an idea of a particular career you want to be able to pursue after your degree, while for some of you, just getting to spend some time on what you are interested in might be your main motivation. Keeping hold of that goal and what success will look like for you will help you to develop that growth mindset and grit, which will help to set you off on the right track and see you through to the end. There's lots more information on both grit and growth mindset online. In particular, I'd recommend checking out Dr. Dweck and Dr. Duckworth's TED Talks, which you can find easily on YouTube. You might even want to bookmark them and keep returning to them. I know I do.
So there you go. The two things you need to succeed at university are a growth mindset and grit. And as mature students, you have a lot of life experience, which I'm sure have given you these skills already. All of the other skills, from writing an essay to referencing your textbooks, will come with time. If you feel like you'd like some additional support with any of the academic skills that you need, then feel free to drop us an email at learningdevelopment@bishopg.ac.uk and we'll discuss what support is available. In the meantime, I want to wish you good luck with your degree and I look forward to meeting you on campus very soon.